Let's take a breath because what just happened at Balmoral wasn't a dinner. It was a reckoning. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding over table seating or the wrong fork. No, this was the kind of dinner that rewrites narratives, repositions power, and breaks loyalty lines that have held strong for decades. What unfolded that evening wasn't just awkward. It was calculated. And its aftermath, that's the real drama.
If you want more unfiltered royal truth, not the palace-approved version, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, are Beatrice and Eugenie breaking the cycle or repeating history? Stay tuned. The tea only gets hotter.
But in royal terms, it was seismic. Sophie, often dubbed the monarchy's secret weapon for her loyalty, discretion, and ability to hold the center while others spun out of control, has always been a figure of elegant endurance. She never sought headlines. She never needed to. Her strength was in staying in the system, anchoring it. So when she decided the system was no longer worthy of her presence, you know it's more than just bad blood. You know something at the very foundation has cracked. But let's rewind for a moment to that infamous night. Catherine, Princess of Wales, arrived separately. On its own, a subtle detail. But for those who've studied the choreography of royal life, separate arrivals scream one thing: tension. And inside Balmoral, tension was practically dripping from the candelabras. Camilla Queen, yes, but also a woman who has never stopped maneuvering, was firmly in control. Her rise to the top has been anything but accidental. Every handshake, every rebrand, every aide reshuffle has brought her closer to consolidating a version of the monarchy that runs through her. Not Charles, her. That evening, over candlelight and heritage tableware, Camilla reportedly delivered what's now become the quote heard around the palace, a pointed, seemingly offhand comment about Catherine perhaps being better suited to motherhood than monarchy. On paper, it's nothing. A passive dig. A bit of courtly shade. But in royal speak, it's a full-on assault. Because Catherine's entire public identity, graceful, poised, maternal, has always been wielded as her superpower. And Camilla went for the jugular, in public, at the Queen's table. Catherine didn't flinch. She didn't fire back. That's not her style. But the silence that followed, that was her answer. And across the table, Sophie saw everything. Sophie, who had watched years of internal shifts, saw aides replaced by Camilla loyalists, saw Catherine slowly sidelined in press coverage, saw more decisions flowing through Clarence House than Kensington. Sophie, who had once believed in the order of the institution, that night, she saw the monarchy not as a symbol of stability, but as a house at war with itself. She stood, she left, and she didn't look back. What followed was unprecedented. A letter, leaked, but not denied. Personal, but precise. Sophie didn't scream. She didn't rant. She documented. She named the culture of cruelty inside the palace. Not in dramatic prose, but in measured reflection. She wrote of women being erased, of power being used to silence rather than serve, of loyalty being weaponized against dignity. And when that letter went public, everything shifted. The royal press machine tried to spin it. Sophie was emotional, exhausted, stepping back for personal reasons. But the people saw through it. They saw a woman who had had enough. They saw what the palace didn't want them to see: fracture. Suddenly, Sophie was no longer the soft-spoken countess. She was a whistleblower. And Catherine, she didn't need to say a word. Her support came in signals. A joint appearance cancelled here, a solo engagement added there. Her independence wasn't just strategic, it was defiant. She began showing up with a new kind of confidence. Not the polished, palace-mandated version, but a quieter force. Poised, composed, but with just enough edge to say, I'm no longer playing this game the way you want me to. She wasn't rebelling. She was repositioning. Because the truth is, Catherine has always understood the long game. She knows how to wield quiet as a weapon. And now, with public opinion on her side, with Sophie's exit casting a harsh light on Camilla's tightening grip, she's rising without ever having to raise her voice. Meanwhile, Camilla is facing something she's not used to: visible dissent. Her control over palace infrastructure remains strong, yes. Her circle is loyal. Her influence, formidable. But influence built on silence and conformity, it's fragile. And Sophie just proved how quickly it can unravel. Because once one person breaks ranks, others start to question the rules. The aides who've been quietly watching for years. The courtiers who've kept their heads down. The family members who've bitten their tongues. Now, they're all reconsidering where their loyalties lie. And that's where the real threat comes in, not from the media, not even from the public. From within, This isn't just about one dinner or one insult. It's about the slow corrosion of trust inside the monarchy. An institution that thrives on loyalty is suddenly facing loyalty's greatest threat: conscious withdrawal. And the public, they're watching it unfold in real time. Younger generations are no longer content with the palace's carefully curated facade. They want substance. They want honesty. They want to know who these people really are. And the more the palace tries to close ranks, the more obvious the cracks become. Sophie's departure has become a symbol. Catherine's quiet resistance, a movement, and Camilla's consolidation of power. It's starting to feel less like strength and more like fear. Because power that depends on isolation, on pushing others out, is power built on sand. And the tide? It's coming in. The monarchy isn't crumbling. Not yet, but it's evolving under pressure. And the direction it goes next depends not on titles or traditions but on who the public chooses to believe in. And right now, they're choosing Sophie. They're choosing Catherine. Not because they're perfect, not because they played the game flawlessly, but because they're real, because they're fallible, because in a sea of silence, they made noise not with scandal, but with dignity. This is the moment the royal family stops being about hierarchy and starts being about humanity. And when future historians look back at this chapter in royal history, they won't remember the speechless dinners or the carefully worded statements. They'll remember the woman who stood up and walked away, and the one who stayed just long enough to change the game forever. And here we are standing at the gates of a royal house that's whispering its way into full-blown rupture. Because when Sophie walked out of that room, she didn't just leave behind the silverware and the tension-saturated air. She walked out of a system, a hierarchy, a centuries-old institution that expected her to smile, curtsy, and stay silent no matter how sharp the daggers being passed beneath the linen. But Sophie, she chose herself. And the aftermath? Oh, it's messier than a tea tray after a palace luncheon with no staff to clear it. The palace tried to do what it always does: control the narrative. Release a soft focus photo of Charles tending to wildflowers. Send Camilla out for a charity event in tweed and pearls. Issue vague briefings to the press with phrases like business as usual and a time of quiet reflection. But there was no mistaking it. The public felt the shift, because this wasn't some distant, abstract royal shakeup. This was personal. People saw themselves in Sophie, in Catherine, in women being told to hold their tongue, to shrink, to smile, while power passed over them like they were decorative china on a Windsor sideboard. And suddenly, what looked like a polite family dinner felt more like a battlefield dressed in lace. The palace wants to pretend it's still about duty and tradition. But behind the velvet curtains, it's about survival, power, and maybe more than anything it's about control. Who has it? Who's losing it? And who's finally done pretending that everything's fine? Let's talk about that control. Because Camilla isn't just wearing a crown. She's wielding it, strategically, relentlessly. Ever since her coronation, she's been reorganizing court life like it's a chessboard. New hires, new media strategies, old allies gently pushed out, whispers that become headlines. Royal traditions bent not broken, but definitely reinterpreted under her quiet rule. She's not the dramatic type. That's not her game. Camilla's not flipping tables. She's shifting place cards, rewriting protocols, controlling who gets access, and who gets buried in the background of palace press photos. And no one's been more affected by that quiet revolution than Catherine. For years, the Princess of Wales was the monarchy's unshakable jewel. Perfect hair, effortless grace, unblemished reputation. The public adored her. She modernized the image of royal womanhood without ever seeming to challenge it outright. But now, Catherine is no longer being protected by the palace machine. She's being targeted by it. It started subtly. Her public appearances reduced. Joint events with Camilla mysteriously vanishing from the calendar. Staff reshuffles at Kensington Palace that removed trusted aides. Headlines that questioned her absence. Whispered rumors about her adjustments to royal life, framing her natural privacy as detachment. And then came that dinner. That line. That dig. Camilla took Catherine's strength, her motherhood, her relatability, and tried to twist it into weakness. She called into question the very thing that makes Catherine feel real to the public. And here's where it gets deliciously ironic. That move. It backfired. Because if the Queen thought Catherine would crumble, retreat, or lash out, she misread her opponent. Catherine didn't run. She recalibrated. She started showing up with sharper focus. She wore bolder looks, stood taller in press engagements. Her smiles had an edge. Her statements, fewer but more precise. She wasn't just the woman behind the future king anymore. She was staking her own territory. And in the background, William was watching everything. Now, let's not pretend he's some passive figure in this. William knows the weight of his future. But here's the twist, he's increasingly aligning himself not with tradition but with truth. When Sophie left, he didn't cover it up, didn't scold. Insiders say he was understanding, supportive, even, because maybe he saw what Sophie saw. That the palace wasn't being governed by family values anymore but by palace politics. And William, he's not blind to the way Catherine's being treated. He knows her strength, knows how much she's sacrificed. And if he's choosing between siding with the current power structure or standing by the woman who's been his anchor through it all, that choice is already being made quietly, but unmistakably. The public is catching on. Social media is not subtle about it. Sophie's letter, Catherine's distance, Camilla's moves, they've sparked a wildfire of theories, threads, and think pieces. People are dissecting palace appearances like they're crime scenes. Every eye twitch, every side glance, every strategic absence is being analyzed. And the press, even the more conservative outlets, are starting to ask harder questions. The phrase culture of cruelty has stuck, because when a royal walks away and uses those words, it no longer feels like drama. It feels like truth. But here's the real danger for the monarchy. Once that curtain of perfection drops even a little, it's very hard to pull it back up. The royal family has spent centuries perfecting its image. But in an age of digital transparency, curated mystique doesn't go as far as it used to. People want authenticity, vulnerability, and when they see a woman like Sophie say, "This is not okay," they believe her. And when they see a woman like Catherine refuse to flinch, they respect her. And suddenly, the old power players Camilla and her tight circle look less like steady hands and more like gatekeepers trying to preserve a crumbling order. Let's not be naive, this isn't the end of the monarchy. Not yet. But it is a moment of reckoning. An institution built on bloodlines is now being challenged by something much harder to control: character. And character is exactly what Catherine and Sophie are showing. Not in scandal, not in salacious leaks, but in presence, in silence, in walking away, in choosing dignity over drama, truth over tradition. Catherine isn't trying to destroy the monarchy. She's trying to redefine it, to reshape it into something that doesn't silence women when they become inconvenient. Something that doesn't protect hierarchy at the expense of humanity. And if the institution is smart, it'll listen. Because if it keeps pushing away the very women who give it relevance, who keep it modern, soft, human, it might find itself surrounded by gold walls and echo chambers. A palace, but no people. And the monarchy, without the people, it's just a costume party in a very old house. So here's where we are. A duchess has walked away. A princess is standing her ground. And a queen may be discovering that power built on silence doesn't hold forever. The royal court is changing. And for once, it's not because of death or coronation. It's changing because the women inside it refuse to be erased. And when that happens, no matter how many crowns are polished, no matter how many statements are issued, there's no going back. Only forward. Only different. Only real. The palace may pretend everything is fine, but we know better. Because behind those centuries-old walls, under the weight of titles and tiaras, the monarchy isn't just reeling, it's redefining. And the catalyst, a woman who said nothing at all. Sophie didn't need to scream. She didn't need to rant. She didn't throw tea across the room or slam a door. No, she simply stood up, left the table, and by doing so, shook the monarchy to its core. Because when someone like Sophie walks away, it doesn't look rebellious, it looks honest. It looks earned. It says, I've played the game. I followed the rules. And I refuse to play anymore. And for an institution that runs on obedience masked as tradition, that kind of silent defiance is terrifying. You could almost hear the courtiers scrambling behind the scenes, briefings being rewritten, PR advisors whispering damage control strategies over crystal decanters. The old guard trying to patch a crack they can no longer deny. Because what's happening now is different. It's not scandal. It's not tabloid fluff. It's internal collapse dressed in silk gloves. And then there's Catherine, still standing, still smiling. But make no mistake, she's changed. She's not the same woman who entered royal life 2 decades ago, wide-eyed and careful. That version of Catherine, supportive, silent, always perfectly appropriate, was a role she played to survive. And she played it well. But survival isn't the goal anymore. Influence is. And Catherine's influence, it's only growing. Every time she steps out in public now, people pay attention not just to her dress or her earrings, but to how she's walking, who she's with, and what she's saying, or not saying. The silence is strategic. The distance from Camilla, calculated. The solo appearances, deliberate. She's building her own court not of royals, but of public trust. And in the middle of all this quiet rebellion, the monarchy is showing its age. Because the more it tries to tighten its grip, the more obvious the fractures become. Every reshuffled aid, every cancelled joint appearance, every sanitized press release. The institution is straining under the pressure of relevance. It wants to remain timeless, but it's being outpaced by women who are timely. Women who understand that strength doesn't mean silence. That being regal isn't the same as being complicit. That royalty, in this modern world, isn't about blood, it's about behavior. Let's talk about that for a second. Camilla might be queen by title, but Catherine, she's becoming queen by presence. It's in the way people cheer when she enters a room. The way her causes actually trend. The way people relate to her not as a figurehead, but as a woman juggling pressure, expectation, and now, open palace resistance. She doesn't need to campaign. She doesn't need to posture. Because the people have already chosen. And the monarchy knows it. That's why the dinner at Balmoral mattered so much. That's why Camilla's comment wasn't just petty, it was tactical. Because Catherine is the future. But Camilla, she's fighting to keep the present. You can see it in the restructuring of royal households, in the quiet rebranding of Camilla's public image. They've worked hard to cast her as a unifying figure, warm, relatable, charitable. But in the wake of Sophie's exit and Catherine's visible retreat, that image is fraying. The press can only carry so much of the weight. And when the women around the queen begin to vanish or distance themselves, people start asking questions. Uncomfortable ones. Where is the compassion? Where is the fairness? Why does power seem to cost every other woman their voice? Because that's the thread that ties it all together. Voice. Sophie used hers in a letter. Catherine is using hers in actions. And both of them are calling out subtly, bravely, the monarchy's culture of controlled silence. It's a culture that tells women to smile through betrayal, to show up even when they're being erased, to serve without question and suffer without comment. But that's changing. Because if this new chapter in royal history has taught us anything, it's that the age of palace obedience is over. People are done accepting half-truths and curated narratives. They don't want flawless photos, they want accountability. They don't want perfectly timed balcony appearances, they want transparency. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, you're officially part of the small percentage of people who don't just click away, and that means a lot. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts, your ideas, or even what you'd like to see next. I read every single one of them, and your feedback genuinely shapes the direction of this channel. If you enjoyed the video, tap that like button, it tells YouTube this content is worth sharing. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. We've got more exciting videos coming, and trust me, you'll want to be here for them. This channel is just getting started, and your support helps it grow faster than you realize. Thank you again for spending a part of your day here with me. Stay curious, stay motivated, and as always, take care of yourself. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.